ago, a young man called Max and his wife Heather left a government station in the middle of the West Seacoast called Nauru and walked for a couple of days out to set up temporary building before we went out permanently. 60 years ago in November. And that hymn says it all, doesn't it? Okay. Thinking about the past. Thinking about the future. Do you ever sit down and think about it?
Yes.
Good on you. Have you written it down, all the things you want people to remember, and the kids special? That's what they say. I said to our boys, the kids can say what they like about Grandma. But walking out there 60 years ago, what was God? Why were we chosen? I said to Max, a couple of ordinary kids from New Zealand. Didn't have a heck of a lot of abilities, but a faith in God, and God had chosen us. And I think that's the wonderful thing. So we stayed there for a month at Civil Angus, sitting in their houses, because we didn't have a house at that stage, while we built these two little huts. One was to be our bedroom, and one was to be the kitchen. And beside the bedroom, a large hole was dug. You know what that was for, don't you? With a shelter around it. The people thought, hey, you two sleep in one bed? You sleep together? They never did. The men slept in the men's house, the women in their little house with the dirt floor, like all the houses were, and they looked after the children. When it came for sex, it happened out in the gardens. Yeah, that's it. But they didn't have it for 3 years. I'll be honest with you, the children were fed for 3 years, so they had that wonderful spacing of 3 years. But here we were, these white people, they slept in the same bed. I was the first white lady that ever walked all those paths. And when I looked back on it, I thought, those people must have, well, they did look at me. They touched me. They looked at my clothes. They wanted to know if I was like them underneath all that I had on. We had shoes and socks. They were in bare feet, and I think I've shown you the little skirt that the woman wore, made from grass seeds and just a necklace. And the men had just a shell or a bit of bark from the tree. One or two had a loincloth, but very few. And there we went for the month. And we said, well, we're going to leave some stuff here, we'll be back. Give us a few weeks. We went back to the government station. We went round the long way home, actually. Well, not home, going back to the government station. Introduced ourselves to all the other villages along the ridges. Here were these funny white people. We spent December packing up. Now, if you can think in your mind, going out, way out there with nothing was there except a shell of a house. What were we going to need? A table, chairs, a stone, saucepans, a tub to wash in, knives, forks, cutlery, plates. I mean, they didn't have anything like that, but that's what we had. End of December, there were 50 carriers lined up at Nauru. And we said goodbye to civilization. And away we walked for these 2 days, staying in a couple of villages on the way, crossing a river where I nearly lost my clothes. But that was just one of the things. And we settled out there. When I think about it, it's wonderful what God does with your life. Why were we going? Christ had called us to follow him. And he had told us he would go with us wherever we went, and he would never leave us. And the more I think about that, that was the strength that kept us. Because it wasn't easy. You've just got to think. 2 people living out there, completely strange, nobody knew our language, we had to learn theirs. And of course they only had to learn 2 names. When we went to the villages, we had to learn hundreds. Because you greeted people by their name, it was important. But why did we go? What was the message? Look at verse 2 and 3 in that hymn. If you ever look at it again, verse 2 and 3. In Christ alone, till on that cross, as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. For every sin on him was laid. Here in the death of Christ I live, but here in the death of Christ they could live. They'd never heard. They'd never heard. So that's why we went. Their lives were controlled by fear. By talking about Jesus, they were delivered into freedom as they accepted Jesus. Sure, it involved medical care. Max every day and several nights would spend hours doing medical work. Education was my forte, but it meant that we sat with them in their houses on the squatted little stumps and the dirt floor. They couldn't come into our houses for a while, because we only had those two little huts. But we would sit with them, and they'd talk to us about their customs. We talked to them about our customs. Who remembers the bogeyman story? Yeah, we told them about that once. They laughed and laughed. They said, "You white people have those stories." And I said, "Yes, there are a lot of white people that don't know about Jesus yet." But at any rate, they watched everything we did. Watched us when we smiled. Years later, when Max was talking about marriage and how to work out with arguments, one of the men came up to him afterwards and said, "Hey, Tuck, you and Heather used to argue, didn't you?" And Max said, "What makes you say that?" "Oh, we used to look at your faces when you came out of your house." That's the point. They read everything. It was a real illumination. But isn't that what Christ does? Isn't that what it means when Christ lives within us? We can be the light there where he places us. We didn't go without him, we went with him. Well, how did it change their lives? They lived in darkness. Now, it's hard for us to understand, I think, when you live here. But Andrew might know about living in fear. Fear of the demons, fear of the evil spirits that live there, that live along the road. In that garden there's probably a whole lot of demons. And if you cut something that you haven't placated the demons, you'll be killed. There are demons all up there. There are demons wherever you go. I think I told you about the story when we built our bigger house. And I finished feeding Dean one day and I tucked him in his bed, and there were all these people out there talking with Max excitedly, and I said to Max, what's the problem? He said, "Well, they're just asking me why did we build our house right over in that corner of the section that they gave us." And he said, "I've told them, well, we wanted a big area where our children and you could come and talk with us and the children could play." So he said, "I've asked them, what are you worried about?" They said, "Well, right under that house is the devil's stone we used to sacrifice to the evil spirits." So Max said that to me. I said, "But that's okay, Jesus lives with us now. We don't need to worry about evil spirits because Jesus, the one true spirit, is greater than all those." And we realised when we looked at their faces, it dawned on them what this man Tuck was telling them on Sundays. There's more to it than what they realise. This Jesus is stronger than all their spirits. So a freedom came in. They didn't have to worry about offerings, bodies, dead animal bodies. They could walk along the path to the next village without being scared that village demons and evil spirits would attack them. You see, to us, we find that almost impossible to understand, don't we? You imagine going down to the shops at Greeton and you had to placate the spirits before you went down there. Yeah, that's what their lives were like. So, once they started to accept Jesus as their Saviour, they confessed their sins and accepted Jesus as their Saviour, baptised little groups of people. And I should say here too, that there just wasn't one person at a time who came. Went to the Arcia village, and half a dozen would come up and say, we want to be Christians. Because they were a group of people in their villages. Sibalanga, there'd be a dozen. Mukwalembe, maybe 20 or 30. Wasserang, a lot more than that. All along, there'd be groups. So they'd sat in their villages and talked about what that white man up there was talking about. And they said, we want to follow Jesus. Now that was amazing. The light was beginning to expel the darkness. And we could see it because the people had a brightness about them. They had a lightness in their walk and what they did. So the changes were dramatic in lots of cases. One ex-witch doctor came to Max one day and he said, Max, the people, the non-Christian people are saying we don't eat meat anymore because we're Christians. And Max said, oh, why? He said, well, I was the witch doctor and I'd go to my little hut and I'd ask the spirits to tell us where the pigs were so we could go and shoot them and kill them. And Max said, oh, hang on, Yeprin. Max went in and got his Bible and read the Lord's Prayer to him. And you know what the Lord's Prayer says? Give us today our daily bread. Now what does that really mean? Have you thought that? If you sat down and worked that one out. So Max read that to Yeprin and said, Yeprin, that's what Jesus said. All right, next time you're hunting for pigs, stand around and ask Jesus to show you where the pigs are. All right. About a week later he came back and said, oh, Tuck, yes, Jesus showed us where the pigs were. We stood around in the Marikuma village and we asked Jesus to show us where the pigs were, and the young men went out and they were back within about an hour and a half with 4 dead pigs. He said, God does answer our prayer. And I thought, yeah, well, of course he does. Sometimes it takes a little year or two. But there he did, and he was showing that he was with them. The light was beginning to shine in the darkness. Yeah. They could plant their gardens without having to make sacrifices. They could walk from village to village without having to placate the spirits. They could do away with their charms. And that was a big thing, actually, was to throw them away. But because they came as groups, they had strength from each other. And that's important. We went there, and what did we see? We saw the light changing lives. And it was incredible. But of course that light, in one sense, was coming through us. And I don't think it dawned on me for a while that Jesus, like I now strongly believe that Jesus is so much in me. It's me that's Jesus coming out. And we live here, and people here should see the Lord in our lives. All the time. We've got to see that that's happening. And so, bit by bit, day by day, little things would happen. One more thing. Next January, they're celebrating the 60 years of them having Christ and his word in their district in January. We won't be going. We can't do that. My back won't allow it. But we were back there 3 years ago, back in 2016. And we've got to admit that we were amazed at what God has done. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not put it out. Now, admittedly, they're not having troubles like persecution, but there's other things happening. The temptation of money. Some people want to get oil drilled in the area. Other people want them to do this or that to get money. They've got telephones. They've got iPads. They're listening. All this pornography is coming into their lives. They're introducing fire water. You can guess what that is. A type of alcohol is being made. They're losing a little bit of that vision. So we are praying that God again will meet them in a special way. But 3-4 generations of lives have been changed since 60 years ago, November. It's amazing, isn't it? We can thank God for that. Many churches, when we left in 1976 to come home with 3 teenage boys, there were about 7 or 8. Now there's nearly 30 all through the area. They've reached out. They've gone for 2 or 3 days walk to reach to the next village group, the next village group. So that's really encouragement. 60 years of the light of Jesus Christ at a place called Sivanganga in the middle of a remote area of the West Sea of Papua New Guinea. And the more I look at this hymn, telling the story of verses 2 and 3, the love of Christ on the cross. He was buried, and in the grave he rose again. And as he stands in victory, look at it, he stands in victory. Sin's curse has lost its grip on me. For I am his and he is mine, all with the precious blood of Christ. And they can say that. But the last verse, no guilt in life, no fear in death. That is our testimony, isn't it? Yes. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck me from his hand. Hang on to there.
Yes.
Till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ, I'll stand. That's all.